excited to have you join us today for New Year, New Impact, a Service Learning 101 to kick off your school year. To get us started, I would love for everyone just to start introducing yourselves in the chat. Share your name, where you're from, your level of service learning experience, any questions you might have for us today. My name is Amy Mewers. I'm the CEO for the National Youth Leadership Council. And again, I'm just excited to be able to welcome you all today and thank you for taking the time to learn more about service learning. We're welcoming students back after a beautiful summer, and it's a great time to start thinking about where service learning can really help enhance classroom instruction, after school programming, even the work that you're doing with nonprofits. So again, thank you all for being here. Just a little bit about NYLC. Our mission is to equip young people with the knowledge, skills, and confidence, amplifying youth voice to co-create a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world. Our work is really about envisioning a place where every young person engages in social action and is recognized as essential to civic society. And so, what that really means and looks like is that our approach is really about cultivating those key leadership values around integrity, empathy, and civic responsibility. We want to instill that spirit of service and contribution in every young person that is part of the work that we do, the people that we work with. So we look at how we can help increase student engagement through service learning, youth voice and youth leadership, that social emotional learning, um, problem solving skills, that civic engagement, and help young people discover who they are and who they want to be, right? That career exploration that is part of the service learning experience. It's just a little bit more about what we do. So, kind of that high level thinking down to what does that actually look like? What does NYLC do? So we support leadership for service learning. So building really the spaces and models for service learning instruction, helping with the quantity and quality of service learning experiences, both in and outside of schools. So providing professional development, resources, convenings, these webinars and thought leader sessions that really help advance service learning instruction in all the different spaces. We do a lot of advocacy for service learning and youth voice. So participating in different coalitions, state networks, supporting our service commissions to really look at how can we advance the practice of service learning across the different states, whether that's advocating solely for service learning or if it's advocating for civic education using service learning, if it's supporting state after school networks to bring more service learning into after school programs. And then, of course, we have the programming and the resources. So we have our own national service learning program called Youth as Solutions, where we're developing young leaders to take action in their community around issues that are important to them, while we're supporting their adult leaders in service learning and youth adult partnership. Um, we have lots of work with school districts across the nation. We're doing research that supports service learning and democracy outcomes. So lots of different ways that NYLC is supporting service learning and advancing the field and practice of service learning. So, as we start to dig into what service learning is and what it can look like, I'd like to start off with what is community service, right? So, it's an activity that engages people in addressing the needs of their school or community. It can be a one off event, right? A park cleanup, or it could be an ongoing service activity where a young person, perhaps they're going to a community partner every week and engaging in service. So it's a way that young people are addressing the needs either in their school or in their community through service. And then as we start to talk about what is service learning, NYLC defines it as an approach to teaching and learning where students use academic civic knowledge and skills to address a genuine community need. So, as we start to really think about what that means and looks like, um, NYLC has used a service learning by design approach to support educators to really step back and think about what are the learning outcomes that we want for our students first. So going what I have up on the screen for you to consider is the service learning by design, and it's in stages, and this is really the educator experience of service learning, where you're identifying the outcomes for young people, excuse me, whether that's academic standards, those civic skills, college and career readiness, social emotional character development. What are the skills that you want young people to gain from their service learning experience? And then in stage two, what evidence are we collecting in order to know that young people are gaining those skills? And so that evidence is connected deeply to stage three, which is the student experience. So as young people investigate the community issue. What is evidence of learning? Is it research projects? Is it presenting on their topic? What is the evidence of learning that we can collect? As they're planning and preparing, as they're creating budgets and timelines and reaching out to community partners and deciding how they're going to take action. Again, what's the evidence of learning and how can we deeply connect it to learning experiences for young people? Then they take action, right? So that's that service component, what they're actually doing to impact the community. We're reflecting throughout the process, always reflecting. What are we learning? What are we seeing? What are we feeling? How are we impacting the community? Constantly reflecting throughout service learning, and then demonstrating, right? Demonstrating what we've learned, the impact we've made, how we would change what we did. So really having those young people share their knowledge and experience with others, whether that's the classroom community, the school, the greater community. Excuse me for 1 second. Spring allergy, or I should say fall allergies. So throughout that student cycle, we're always looking at that deep connection to learning for students. And then stage four is really assessing the service learning experience. Educators can do this on their own, or it can be part of their process they do with their students, which is very impactful. But as an educator who has led and facilitated a service learning experience, what did you learn? Did the students reach those learning outcomes that we identified in stage one? What could have been done differently? How can you shift your unit plan in order to support the service learning experience in a new way? So, as we talk about service learning and we think about what this can look like, both in and out of classrooms, we always want to have that deep connection and thinking about what is it that students want to and need to be learning in order for it to be a true service learning experience. And again, I just pulled out this iPod process here just to kind of blow it up. But I think what's really important in this graphic is as we talk about the entire service learning experience, the smallest piece of the pie of the circle here is the action itself. Sometimes we focus so much on the action that we forget some of the learning and the depth of experience that really helps young people engage in meaningful learning through investigation, through reflection, through the planning and preparation and demonstration. So the action itself is meaningful and important, but it's only a small slice of the service learning experience that we need young people to fully engage in order to both have an impact on themselves and a strong impact on community. It moves beyond those hours and really helps young people gain a deeper understanding of themselves, their place in the community, the root causes of the issues that are facing the community, and it helps them develop um, actions, impacts that they want to have in a really meaningful way. It helps them connect in a new way to their community. There's also, and not to overwhelm folks, I want to share there are standards for quality practice in service learning. The K 12 service learning standards for quality practice were published in 2008. We are working to get these updated. So I'm happy to talk more offline with anyone who's interested in learning more. But the standards really do ensure that the experience that young people are having within the service learning practice is quality. So there needs to be that meaningful service. Young people need to know that the contribution they're making is actually going to make a difference. It's that link to curriculum that we talked about, right? Like we need to know what the learning outcomes are for students and actually link it to learning. Reflection. There is no service learning without reflection. I will say that over and over. If we're not reflecting, we're not doing service learning because you're not going to get to those learning outcomes and to a lot of the meaningful contributions that young people want to experience, that we want them to experience without reflection. We need diversity, diversity of thought, diversity of engagement experiences. Diversity needs to be interwoven into the service learning experience, along with youth voice. And we're gonna dive a little bit deeper, particularly into youth voice. Young people are leading in service learning experiences where educators become the facilitators of knowledge and supporting the service learning. So we really need to elevate youth voice in classrooms and in all spaces in order for service learning to be successful. Partnerships is a space that I think some people struggle with, where as educators, we feel like we need to identify the partners for the students. Who are they going to work with in the community? How can I help make connections? Which is wonderful and good. And if we're lucky, our school might have someone that helps coordinate that. But so, let's face it, it feels like the burden that the teacher, the instructor has to take on when they're facilitating service learning. I would push that students have the opportunity to really make that connection to community partners who can help them address the issues. We need to build partnerships within the community for young people to take action, but young people can play a crucial role in making that happen. Um, and like I say, it becomes, I think sometimes partnerships, that space starts to become feel like a real heavy lift for educators. So the more we can move that to the service learning experience that young people are doing and have them help make those connections, communicate with partners, um, the less burden we as educators have to carry in the service learning experience. Progress monitoring ensures that we're meeting those outcomes, right? So, that evidence collection. We can still do tests, we can have papers, we can have presentations and debates, and all of the things as part of the service learning experience. But we need to be doing all of the check ins to ensure that we're actually getting to the learning, and honestly to the service part, right? Like we need to know where students are at in their planning. And then duration and intensity. Um, I've we've seen service learning experiences happen where someone will say they did it in a day. You're leaning more into that community service space. The longer the service learning experience is for students and the more intense it is, meaning, the more hours and engagement they have in it, the more impactful it's going to be, right? So, if we can move beyond a day or week to a semester long, or even, if we can make it longer, if we can do a year long, and the more time commitment that young people, the more investment they have, the more intensity they put into the service learning experience, they begin to engage in a deeper way. So, they start to connect to the community issue. They start, the ideas start to develop in a more meaningful way. That service becomes more meaningful because they've had more time to think, to investigate, to meet with community partners and learn more. So that duration and intensity is really where that true deep connection to the community can come for students. So the standards are available on our website. There are videos and more ways to learn more about how these show up and what they look like. But I think it's important to also recognize, like, we can't do all of these all at once. Um, there are ways to bring more of these standards into your practice, the more you engage with it. Um, but we are going to talk more about youth voice because that is a space that is really important, to elevate the practice. So I will get there, I promise. So just again to recap, um, community service or volunteering, you're meeting the needs of those in the community. It can be that one-time event or reoccurring commitment, and it may or may not involve critical reflection. We love it when that reflection happens after a service event, but it doesn't always happen. Service learning, on the other hand, meets the needs of the community while we get to the learning, leadership, the character goals, right? Like those identified outcomes we want for our students. It follows a structured process. So we're not just the service goals, but the learning goals are met. And again, there is no service learning without reflection. Um, they have to reflect on the context of the problem. They have to start to understand those underlying issues and causes, that connection to themselves. So, reflection is a key component of service learning. And just a little bit, as we talk about service learning, it is a pedagogy, right? It is experiential, it's hands on learning, it's brain based learning, it's constructivist, it's inquiry based. You heard me talk about investigation, inquiry. It's youth led, that youth voice, and it is evidence based. The research supports that, when service learning is done with quality, young people engage more in their learning. And so when we know when they engage more, they learn more. One of my favorite, I'll say quotes, we were working with a school district in Chicago, and this was one of those schools you could consider a last chance school, right? A lot of the kids have been kicked out of normal classrooms. They didn't show up for school. The teacher said, when we do service learning, the days that we have service learning in our instructional strategy, the day we're doing service learning, the kids show up. And if they show up, I can teach them. And so that's the beauty of service learning is students love engaging in the process. they're not sitting in their seats, they're working together, they're engaging in conversation with community, they're looking at how can I make my community better. And so when we use service learning, when their bottoms are in the seats, we can teach them. And that's the beauty of why service learning is such a powerful instructional strategy. So I am going to attempt here to show a video. I'm learning a new platform here. So give me just a moment and I'm going to see if I can share this great video with you. If I cannot figure this out, I will drop it in the chat so that you can watch it. It's just about a 2.5 minute video um, that is a great example of what service learning can look like with different grade levels. So just give me one moment here. My apologies, everyone, that you could not hear that. So I'm going to drop this video in the link. Again, it's a great example from elementary all the way up to high school of what service learning can look like when it's done with quality. So again, apologies about that. I want to talk just a minute about why service learning for students, for teachers, for the community. So when we think about the why for young people, obviously, we can get to that um, academic and cognitive development through service learning when we use service learning by design. There's that personal development. They find their passions, the skills that they didn't necessarily know that they had. That leadership and just it's a great personal development. It helps them figure out who they are in context of community. It's also social and interpersonal development along with those 21st century skills. So we know that when young people are engaging in service learning, they are they're learning to communicate over and over. When we speak to young people, they talk about that communication and collaboration, those skills that they're developing, the inquiry, like learning to problem solve and navigate situations, both um, interpersonal and the larger issues with within the community that they're addressing. So it's a great way for young people to really have a holistic growth within the learning experience. When we think about it for teachers, It's you're applying learning to the real world, right? Like you're making learning relevant for young people. I talked about this already, but that student engagement, right? They want to show up. They're excited for class. They are ready to tackle what's in front of them. You're creating a classroom culture and community. Young people are working together in partnership with the adults in the room. They're working in partnership with each other. Um, it's that interpersonal skills that we're helping them develop, and you're being that facilitator of knowledge. And it provides educators with a specific role and purpose. Again, as facilitators of knowledge, of elevating the youth voice within the classroom instruction. And then when we think about why service learning for community, young people bring new energy, new perspectives. We're building that new generation of leaders, right? Those young people who might see themselves running for office or volunteering in the community. And it's helping change the image of young people, not as recipients of service, but of those who can give and provide and be an asset to the community. So there are so many different reasons why we should be incorporating service learning into our instruction. So I would love for those of you online here in the chat, if you want to just share, where do you see service learning fitting into your subject area? Kind of think about what could that look like, and then feel free to comment on each uh, uh, others' ideas, sorry. So go ahead and share in the chat. As I was talking, were you inspired about, hey, I could turn this or I could turn this unit into service learning? So feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. And as you're doing that, I want to start to dig into youth voice. So um, we define youth voice as supporting young people in taking a leading role in their own education through inquiry and applied learning in partnership with adults. Um, and a huge shout out to Earth Force, a great partner organization of NYLC, for providing that definition. But when we break that down, it's really, we're talking about, again, supporting young people in being in a leadership role within their own education. And when we do that, service learning does that in a beautiful way. And often we talk about leadership and we don't define it. And I think the Free Child Institute has a great definition for youth leadership. So it happens anytime a young person takes control, manages, directs, and leads themselves and or others. They show their leadership by identifying what matters to them and holding true to those things, including their values, objectives, goals, and ideas. And again, service learning supports young people in developing their leadership. It helps them figure out how to collaborate and lead others, what matters to them, and really thinking about how they want to show up, live their values, um, engage in the community, and really be part of the learning experience. And as we talk about youth voice, a lot of times when we talk about youth voice, some people think, oh, that means turning everything over to young people, right? Like basically, I flip on the lights and it becomes their room. And no, that is not at all what we mean. And the advocates for youth have a great definition, and we're going to talk more about this too. That youth adult partnership is where adults work in full partnership with young people on issues facing youth, the program, the policies, the community that are affecting young people. So when we're talking about working in full partnership, It doesn't mean turning everything over to young people. It means facilitating, bringing your knowledge and expertise into the space, but giving young people the opportunity and the power of decision making, of sharing their thoughts and ideas, of taking action and working together in a collaboration. And so, just a few ideas about how we elevate youth voice and build that true partnership. So, we want to involve youth in authentic decision making. Um, a lot of times we see young people where they're asked their opinion, but we already know what the decision is going to be. So, being authentic, having young people make those authentic decisions, if we're going in and as educators, we know what the project needs to be, or we've already identified who that community partner is, we take that off the table, right? And we find other spaces for how young people can make authentic decisions within the service learning experience to help build their leadership, their capacity to elevate their voice. That can be having them decide who's doing what and how the service experience is going to roll out, how they're going to demonstrate. So, thinking about where are those opportunities for young people to actually make decision. Sharing leadership roles and responsibilities, very similar. Again, looking for those opportunities where young people can actually make those decisions and responsibilities, right? Can they communicate with the community partner? Do you have to take that on yourselves? Can they meet with the principal to set up to cut, to fill out forms or whatever might some of the administrative work that might need to happen for their service activity. Can they be the ones that design a communication to parents and guardians around the demonstration that's going to be happening? Like, where are those leadership and responsibilities that young people can take on? The adult mentorship, we want to enhance, the experience and skills of young people. So as we think about, again, facilitating the service learning experience, it's more of a mentorship role than a traditional, sage on the stage standing in front of young people directing what they do. We're mentoring and supporting them. We're asking them questions, helping them gain their own knowledge, make up their own minds. And of course, we want to consider those communication styles and strategies. We know young people work in different ways. So, how are we engaging them? Are we using different communication techniques, different strategies to support them? Whether and it's even thinking about how they work together, right? Is it one-on-one? Are they working in small teams? When is there opportunity for full classroom instruction or full program instruction? Like different ways that we can have them communicate with each other, hold each other accountable. How are we holding them accountable? And of course, within any partnership, you want to make that time to celebrate. So celebrate the wins, the milestones, how they're working together, how they're working in partnership with you or other adults within the service learning experience. So lots of ways to think about how we build that youth adult partnership. I do wanna, just to do another quick definition. A lot of times, we're seeing service learning really being integrated into, um, civic education or civic engagement, and civic education, is really about providing students with the knowledge about government laws and civic responsibilities Civic engagement is that application of knowledge through active participation in community and or government. And so that's where service learning really starts to support the civic engagement of young people. You can incorporate service learning into civic education. So you're doing both at once. So a government class would be a great service learning experience for young people. Um, some of the social studies classes, even like world history, we've seen amazing service learning experiences come out of those classrooms. So you're getting that education and the engagement at the same time. But when we're talking about service learning, we are talking about civic engagement. So as we're thinking about civic engagement, I would invite you to think about how have you taught about or where have you seen examples of civic education, and how have students solved community problems in your community, and how can those two things come together in order to support quality service learning practice. So just some things to think about, depending on um, where you sit within your own school or organization, the programs that you're running. And then I do want to share a few resources. So, NYLC has a great tool called Getting Started in Service Learning. It's for teachers and practitioners, anyone who is brand new to service learning or just wants some refresher on some of the things that I went through very, very quickly. It walks you through the stages. It's a fillable PDF. You can download from our resource center. Again, it's a great tool to just kind of take you through, give you examples. What does this look like in practice? So I highly recommend taking a moment and downloading that. It's free on our in our resource library. We also have some great tools for after school service learning programs. And I actually recommend these for classroom teachers as well because they're lesson plans. So these are the Engage, it's a service learning handbook for after school. They're age specific, so elementary, middle, and high school. And it's step by step. It takes you through 14 weeks of activities, and so if you're in and after school, it's a great way, if you're working with younger staff who might, or newer staff who haven't had service learning experiences and are brand new to it. This helps walk you through exactly what to do. And if you're a classroom teacher, it's a great resource to give you new ideas on what could work. What are some new reflection, like what are some of the reflection questions? What are some of the activities within investigation that I could use? What are some deliberation opportunities for young people to come to consensus? So there's a lot of like different things in there that could be embedded in classroom instruction as well. And again, free on our in our resource library. Some of my favorite tools are the handbooks, again, for designed for after school, but definitely great for teachers as well. These are specific to 14 to 18, so kind of that middle to high school age range. But these lesson plans were designed around the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals. They're very process oriented. Again, that step by step, 14 weeks of activities. But if you want to be inspired, if you want to have young people are like, we want to take action on water or health or one of the environmental SDGs, we've got some great resources in our library that can really help inspire what that can look like for that little bit older age group. And then I did want to talk just a moment about program readiness. And what we mean by that is really stepping back and thinking about, um, am I ready to jump into a service learning experience, and what do I need to think about? Um, to do that. So obviously we have how to plan, right? What does, how do we identify those outcomes? Think about the uh, the evaluation and the assessing learning. What are my students going to go through? We have the stages, but how do I know that? What do I need to think about and consider before I just jump into planning? So again, the partnership development. We see educators taking this on. A lot of times we come to the table with some partners in mind in our community. Um, Parents have been a great resource for partnership development. But thinking about, okay, like not going in totally blind and putting it all on the students, but having being thoughtful about who's in our community, what's might have been done before, what's been successful with partnerships that we've seen. If we're brand new to service learning, kind of putting feelers out to see what nonprofits or what organizations are in that might be willing to engage with young people. So, really just thinking a little bit about that partnership development ahead of time. The communication and coordination, whether it's with the administration, with parents, with other educators, really thinking about what it's going to take, who you're going to have to communicate with in order to bring this to life. Professional development is extremely important. The research shows that when service learning is not implemented with quality, we can actually hurt our young people. We know that quality service learning gets them engaged, again, gets them to show up, they're excited to learn. And so we can have actually the opposite impact if our service learning isn't implemented with quality. So professional development comes in lots of shapes and sizes. There are a lot of great organizations. NYLC offers a ton of free resources in our resource library. We also do consulting with organizations, school districts, and other spaces. We have a lot of free thought leader sessions coming up, and then webinars and things like this that are available on our YouTube channel for free to watch as well. So I just highly recommend um, doing some professional development prior to launching a service learning unit. Um, there are curricular resources. We have a ton. There's a lot out there. Look for those resources so that you're designing with quality. One of the readiness factors that is always that, I guess, the thing nobody wants to talk about is funding and sustainability. Um, Service learning can require funds for the implementation of the service project. It might be transportation to get to where the action is going to take place. Um, there's different expenses depending on what the action is that might bubble up. So thinking about, and this is where I think as adults, our knowledge and experience can really come into play. Who are the players in our communities that could help with funding? Um, because we know it's hard to get that written into a program budget, a classroom budget, right? If we can't get the supplies we need for our classroom, how are we going to get the money to go out and do this? There are so many great local organizations from Rotary and other community um, organizations that are there to support service learning. And if part of the process, as young people are doing the inquiry, is helping identify where there's funding within their community to support their action, they can be presenting at their local Rotary meeting and inviting the Rotary to invest the $1,500, $500, whatever it is, in their project, right? So, thinking about that funding, and sustainability, getting the administration, our leadership involved in the service learning, so that they see the power of what's happening, thinking about the stories that come out of it, having young people share their experiences with those who can help then identify additional funding and get more people involved in creating these opportunities for young people. And on the same in the same lens is evaluation. So again, kind of that four stage, assessing our own practice, ensuring that the learning outcomes are being met, but really evaluating, where am I at, where can I grow, and how can I continue to support quality experiences for my young people. That self-assess is so important. Evaluating the the experience that you facilitated for those young people. And then kind of a just final reflection, I would invite you to share in the chat again, um, what do you know now that you didn't know before you jumped on this Service Learning 101 webinar? Is there a unit or some part of your program that you see this aligning with? Maybe you have a standard where you're like, "Hey, I could see how I could bring this academic standard to life through a service learning experience." And is there anything you're still wondering about? Because I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. So as you're posing those, I'm loving the chat. I'm just going to say we have some things coming up. So we have a community of practice that meets bi-monthly. We invite you to consider that. We have our resource library that I've mentioned a couple of times. Lots of great resources for you to look at. Um, and then we have on October 6th, we have a thought leader session coming up. And I'm sorry, I don't have that listed here. But throughout the year, we have 6 free thought leader sessions. So I highly encourage you to check those out under events on our website. And within our library too, the other thing I would mention is that we have a unit planner, so to help walk you through the whole process. So it's a great resource to also check out if you're ready to start thinking about what that unit plan could look like. So, of course, I invite you to stay connected with NYLC. Um, I didn't mention it, but one of my favorite things to do is the podcast, The Power of Young People. If you need inspiration, that podcast is definitely something to check out. You hear directly from young people about the changes they're making in the world. It's not all service learning. There is young people talking about their service learning experiences on some of the episodes. Others, it's young people making meaningful change, and it is powerful. If you're ever feeling like, oh, you're just not happy with the trajectory of the world, tune into the podcast. And then, of course, you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Threads. And you can also, if you're not on our newsletter, we would love for you to get our monthly newsletter. It offers free, tells you when all of our events are coming up, free resources, all the things are there. So with that, I would open it up. If anyone has any questions, just drop those in the chat and I will address those. Otherwise, I just say thank you all so much for joining me today, for being willing to consider service learning in your classrooms, in your programs, and just know that NYLC is here to support you on your journey, whatever we can do. We're excited for the new school year and to see all of the great work that comes out of classrooms and after school programs. So, again, thank you all so much. And yes, the recording will be sent out. Thank you all. It was great to see you.